Hey y'all, Grown Black Folks Talk, back out on the climb. And another beautiful summer day. And as Sammy Bliss and I had been, she put the comment, I discussed it, and we're going to discuss it a little bit more today about that 5 stages of grief for Black women. I want to talk about a particular aspect because I have had a truly frustrating weekend. And I want to talk about the 5 stages of grief regarding the triple-edged issue of leadership. We live in a patriarchy. And of course, as someone who worships God the Father in Jesus Christ, there are good ways and bad ways for someone who has a family patriarch. My father, who was a good one. There are good ways and bad ways to experience that, but I think we can probably agree, those of us who are gathered here today, an Anglo-Saxon slave-owning patriarchy is a terrible model for a society in terms of taking care of the needs of all people. But because we live in this society, we have all been, spent some time in schools where men who were absolute, ruthless, bloodthirsty dictators were sold to us as founding fathers. But without going that deep into the level, but I'm going to come back to it. I had to say that first because I need to come back to it. The idea was that men are always the natural leaders of every single thing, was also part of that education. And for Black women, this poses the 5 stages of grief every time some man wants to be a leader. Now, I live in a neighborhood that was gentrified out of existence. My father and some of the other leaders stood up and protected their families from other Black men's foolery. Until white men got tired and gentrified us all, not all of us, but almost everybody else, out of existence, with the help of a whole bunch of other races of people who were tired. That's what happened. Starting with Richard Nixon's good friend, Justin Herman, who has a plaza here named after him. The men who are responsible for this foolery are in jail. Their families, the women and children connected to them, are scattered to the 4 winds. Some of their sons are in jail by now. Course of time. We had a very ferocious prosecutor in San Francisco who later became Attorney General, who some of you in the country know better as Vice President. Vice President Kamala Harris. She made darn sure the jails would be full and the prisons would be full of these men. It is a tragedy. It does not bring me happiness. I spent a lot of years growing up and having to go through guilt and depression on my way to acceptance. Now, it was not blowing out here until I started this conversation. I guess we got to have that ominous soundtrack, huh? I didn't have the leisure to deny it because it happened too early in my life for me to be able to play ego games like that with myself. I didn't have the ability to be angry because I couldn't process it completely, and because I was also my father, my mother, my grandmother. I was also well protected. I did not have any way to bargain with it. I was a child. So what I saw in the failure of Black men to lead their community to prosperity is having to go through the 4th stage of depression and then reach acceptance. That took a long time. But having come there, I can look back and say something else. While I'm watching these manosphere men and their counterparts of other races, I'm like, if your leadership was working real well, I'm not saying there aren't leaders among these people. I have the privilege of being around excellent Black men who are leaders. And I know quite a few white men who are good leaders too. I've known my share of both. Because I tend to look for it, because I don't brook anything else in my life, I tend to find it. The beautiful thing about acceptance, and I'm going to come back to this in a minute, is that you can see clearly and have a full set of reality-based options. But first we need to deal with, for Black women, here's where the triple-edged sword. By the way, a double-edged sword has a triple edge. It has a point on it. if you wanted to sharpen up the handle, but that's another day. Number one, you come to realize a lot of the time that the people you were taught were natural leaders, who are men, are not. You get to experience their unintentional and willful abdications of leadership, and you have to process that in your life. You then, if you want yourself, your sisters, your mom, any children you may have to step up. And then you discover that these men would rather have you hurt or killed, or will tell you to die and have you, or kill you themselves, or play games with suicide and addition to homicide to try to get you to give attention to them instead of doing what you need to do. I had a conversation this weekend with a sister, and that makes the second time in 48 hours, or 72 hours, some conversation with some sisters this week. And they walked into different situations where they had to step up and prevent a tragedy for another black woman, and the black men involved threatened to kill them. I had 2 conversations. And on the second one, I was able to predict what was going to happen in the conversation because it was all the same thing. A black woman had to step into a leadership position she wasn't even supposed to have to be in. And that was enough to disrupt the exploitation that a black man expected to be able to do. And then that man turned around and threatened violence. I had 2 conversations like that with 2 sisters in a single weekend. So then you realize you cannot even exercise the leadership potential that is in you without some of these men flipping out. And then you realize you live in the United States of America, and the heirs of said bloodthirsty petty dictators that I mentioned to you in all shades are also not interested. Because see, let me say this. How this boils down is this way. Ain't no way in the world that the men who want to be heirs of the likes of men like Thomas Jefferson are about to want to take, all this stuff that black women are going to have to be going through because Madam D.A. Foddy Willis is out here doing her job and Judge Keith Cannon doing her job. That tells you, that shooting in Jacksonville of innocent people, that tells you the heirs of Thomas Jefferson are not about if they can prevent it, to allow a black woman to exercise leadership, although it is needed. And sometimes it will still occur because we're just stronger than that. Come on here, Queen Ulana Renos of Kush, who beat back the forces of the Romans and put Caesar Augustus headed effigy and walked on him all over him for the rest of her life. An effigy, at least, under her stairs in her palace. Every time she went in and out and do what she wanted to do in Kush. Bam, 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 bam. Walked on that man's head. We're too strong to allow that to happen, which is why Madam D.A. Foddy Willis and Judge Keith Cannon are going to do what they're going to do. And there are going to be people that are for the right that are going to support that. Because, like I said, there are exceptions to every rule. Not every person in any race is for the wrong. No, it's just not. And also, some people have shown their behinds, their little white supremacists behind so bad that other more rational white supremacists who know this is not how you demonstrate superior behavior are kind of willing to let those people go. That's a different thing. But this is the thing. When you, even in this society, do what is necessary for right to be enacted, you deal with the same problem. So it's a triple-edged sword. But see, once you see it and you get through all the stages, denial, anger, bargaining, once you get through this grieving and the sadness that goes with it, we think about grief mostly in the depression stage. Once you get through depression, then you have acceptance, and once you get to acceptance, you have options. So, and a lot of times, bargaining and denial is basically part of our process of trying to figure out what the heck's going on. It is really something when you talk to a sister who raised the person that is threatening her now, or at least assisted in raising. See, I'm on War Aunties, and I know that there are some aunties going through this too. When you talk to people auntie ages, going through this, having their daughters threatened. I'm like, okay, I'm sitting there on the other phone, like, I'm not sitting up there trying to figure out what's going on. I already know this is what's going on. So can we talk about, okay, so have y'all filed a police report? Have y'all assessed how you does this person know where you live? Does he have what kind of transportation does he have? This, that, and the third. Okay, you might want to consider this. He gonna do what now for a job? He going where? Okay, then what you do is you go to court and you make sure this happens, and find the biggest, baddest white attorney that you have, give him $500 for a letter, and let his attorney, if he chooses to get one, have that roll up. Otherwise, hey, if he gonna act a fool, there are plenty of people, unfortunately. But if it's got to be what it's got to be. See, the people who need to make sure that their necks don't beat Derek Chauvin's knee are black men. It's not our job to protect them for that if they want to act a fool and threaten us. But because I accept that fact, I can talk clearly about it. I don't want to see this happen to anyone. I don't want to see these kind of disasters happen that I grew up watching. I don't want to see that happen. But sometimes, as the Bible says, people have to go to their own place. And sometimes, that was said about Judas Iscariot, who was a betrayer, who was in the most privileged position any 12 men on earth could have been in, and betrayed God himself for 30 pieces of silver. Sold out his leader for the price of a female slave, if you go look it up. Of course, it was all part of God's plan. But the point is, what he got to do was earn himself to his own place of, first of all, being held in dishonor and disrespect for 1,000 years, 2,000 years, being disrespected every day. The Bible actually predicted this curse would be put on him, and it was an eternal, everlasting punishment. You sold out Jesus Christ. What's your punishment about to be for all eternity? And all his fellow compadres said, well, he went to his own place. Well, some people are going to have to be allowed to go to their own place. And sometimes what also happens is, since God is not giving up his spot, sometimes a woman has to be the agent of reality with a capital R. Like I'm on the phone with his sister talking about, okay, so this is what you do. This is what you do next. Okay, here's some legal thing. Because here's the other thing. People forget. It's not that black women want to be always in a position where we have to end up doing certain things and we have to take leadership positions, because if we don't, everything for every other woman and child, and even there's some boy children in there too, is going to fall to pieces. But, we happen to learn stuff. And every now and again, with us having learned stuff, we end up being reality's agents. To have to let people know, hey, you're not getting God's spot and you're not getting it over here. It's not a good spot to be in. And that by itself, as someone who has been in that position, is a source of grief. Specifically, depression. To put this on a popular level, y'all hear this voice I have. Confidence with Love will come up here and talk about how to snatch your voice box. Look, I already know I have the Lady Vader attributes there. And if you remember your first Star Wars movies, what did Darth Vader always choose to do? Go snatch that neck. I already know I'm that person. I've known that for a long time. In the past, it used to be the last resort, or second to last resort in the past. Now, because I've reached acceptance of certain things, it's not the last resort. See, we done gone from tactic to strategy. And I learned that was important by studying the Civil War. The best strategists beat two of the best tacticians. You run out of tactics if the strategy is good enough, because you exhaust your resources, you exhaust your mind. Ulysses S. Grant won that war because he understood that. He was a better strategist. In a culture where the strategy is to keep you as a permanent underclass, you have to kind of move on from tactics. In a community where the men will treat you as chattel and tell you that they want you to die after you cannot do anything else for them, you have to get past tactics. You got to move into strategy. Enabling Lady Vader attributes is now part of strategy. But that's not if you watch Star Wars, that's not the most dangerous thing. I mean, you knew you were in trouble if you ever heard of Star Wars. Da 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 da. Dun, 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 da, da, dum, da, da. You knew you were in trouble if you heard that, right? But see, what you didn't notice in Return of the Jedi is how very dangerous to the very end, almost the end of the movie. That old man, do, 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 and it was so quiet in the background. And if you weren't paying attention, you probably didn't even know what you were hearing. Till that lightning came out that man's fingers. See, I have Lady Palpatine attributes in me. Big men in big situations have seen what I have written and said, oh snap, we done. She done electrocuted our whole project because she done kept them records. She done wrote somebody a letter. She done called in a whole bunch of other people. Now I'm in trouble from all directions. I don't even know how it happened. You don't need to know how it happened. But see, that's not a tactic anymore. That's a strategy because I have reached acceptance. I am privileged to be among black people. I don't laugh in men's faces because I respect their humanity and I know men's need for respect. I don't laugh in men's faces when they go on and on about becoming a high-value man with a 6-figure job and a network. I don't laugh. But just know that I'm not impressed. Why? I work with black people who handle not... Go ahead and have your $100,000 job. Go ahead and have your $900,000 job owned by someone else. I belong to the ownership class of black people that handles not 900,000, but 9 figures of responsibility. So, and that comes with doing real politics. I don't find it funny that there are black men still trying to get bail after having sniffed all up Harrison Lloyd. The white preacher who brought him in, Cliff Guard Lee, got out on bond, has a lawyer, got out on bond the day that came in. The black woman, and I know her name is Miss Cootie, I can't remember the first name, grinning in that mugshot. Harrison Floyd brought her in. She got out on bond. Harrison Floyd is a retired Marine living on his disability pension, up in court, having to explain Friday to us grinning white woman judge that he doesn't have money for an attorney, but his income is too high to get a public defender, and that he cannot get bond either. And she's just grinning and telling him, well, I'm not really here to discuss your bond. I'm just letting you know what your rights are, including your rights to defend yourself. I added up the numbers that he put out there in terms of getting that attorney and getting that bond. The man has a wife and child. So what's he going to be able to do? Is he going to be able to protect and provide for them? No. Is he going to be able to protect for his wife and daughter? No. They're going to have to liquidate assets for him to even get bond. The lowest bond number that I've heard from, yeah, it's an emergency, all right. You need to come up with... Hold on, we're going to let that pass. It's an emergency, all right. You're going to have to come out here and liquidate $110,000 to $180,000 to do your bond and your lawyer. The only thing you can start to do now is sell off assets. That means that you're also selling off your daughter's future. Do you think any of those white men went his bail? Donald Trump's a billionaire. Harrison Lloyd is the head of Black Voices for Trump. Think any of them did his bail? See, but when you do real politics, you already knew that was going to happen. And that was the point. It doesn't please me to see it, but it's like that was inevitable because I deal with real capital and real politics. So these men who are sitting up here, lapping up behind white supremacist men, talking about their high-value men with their networks and their jobs owned by somebody else, they are emotionally, mentally, economically not developed enough. They're not developed enough to be able to lead in the way things need to be led at this moment. Just not. If that's all you think about, having a decent job and trying to be behind and fit in with white men, nope. Because history keeps doing the same thing. But see, this is the thing. I have come to acceptance. I have come to acceptance that if you are sitting anywhere on the internet, there are black men who are out here talking about dividends and getting ready for the next crypto bull run. So if you are out here listening to men who are supposed to be in finance, but in every silly thing happening, I can name 4 such men, but I won't right now. I will only mention Anton Dagny because his idea, and I have clips if anybody needs to see it, black men gonna solve their problem by killing off all the black single mothers and starting over. Okay, no, we're not about to do that. But I will mention that genocidal individual because I want y'all to understand I have come to acceptance about it. Since I know that, and since I know these people are in packs of hurt, stunted individuals, I have accepted. And from a position of acceptance, I'm going to go back to that point too. I'm going to lead what I need to lead. And I'm going to have things worked out for if I should need to make sure I have some redundancy. I've got to take on, have good conversations happening this next week to make sure that I have assistance and redundancy in case something happens so things don't fall through. But also, if it comes down to, it needs to be legal, it needs to be political, I'll make sure that's taken care of. Because stuff's got to get done. And the beauty of coming through to acceptance is you can then come through to this is what needs to happen. This is who is in the way. This is how we go around or move. And by the way, we do live in a patriarchy. I was pretty much in where I began. God the Father has never shown himself weak in dealing with men who have decided to trying to get his spot over me. So I just turned folk over to the divine masculine. I was on the phone praying with the sister last night, talking about Lord, give them what they need. Some of them need what Judas Iscariot got. Some of them need what Harrison Floyd is getting. His bond hearing is scheduled according to Clam Esquire Law Intellect. That's a good channel for y'all. She's in the description for a reason. A lot of times she's in the description for a reason. She keeps up on all this stuff in a calm way that you can learn how the law operates. Because like I said, once you really begin to handle real capital, real politics, and understand real law, then coming to acceptance is going to be a lot easier. You're going to be mad at yourself that, how did I let these people fool me this long? And see, here's the problem. If I look at a lot of women's channels, black women channels, there was a new one I was looking at today. I haven't made my final analysis about whether I'm going to recommend her in the description yet. But I was looking at her today, and I was just thinking to myself how many channels I know in which there are foolery channels for black women. They're out there. I'm not putting them out there right now. I have mentioned Cynthia G just because she just wants you to keep on having sex and swapping STDs with black women who won't leave you with children. But from her point of view, you can go ahead and abort the black boys if you won't. I'm going to keep mentioning that because she's genocidal and Hitlerian also. So there are foolery channels out there. But I notice how many channels of black women are trying to help black women do the things we've always done. We have always stepped up to make sure that those who needed care are taken care of. This is why Confidence with Love, shout out to Confidence with Love, talks about a matriarchy versus a patriarchy. Based on black women's behavior, if the women are in charge and are able to work effectively, everybody gets their needs met. Versus this, what we have. Now, because I was raised in a loving patriarchy, and because Christianity is basically a patriarch who is love, heading it. It is possible for men to mature and get to be like this. I know so many. I've noticed them on this channel. I've talked about the elevation of black men when I have seen this. And how wonderful it is to be able to encourage and support that. And how much I would like to do more of that. But I'm in the acceptance stage. And in the exception stage, I recognize the wonderful exceptions to you. I would love to be able to associate with other races and men like that too. Now, I have to say, for our divestment hyperbole sisters, I done talked to some women around the world this weekend too, and I'm like, it's the same stuff. I done read some accounts. It's the same stuff. It has nothing to do with the race of the man. It has to do, is he willing to accept his place as a steward, not the owner of everything around him? Does he understand that is the assignment? If he doesn't, in a Anglo-Saxon chattel-making patriarchy in which bloodthirsty petty dictators are held as the founding fathers, and it doesn't please me to say that, but you just have to look at almost all the men that sign the Declaration of Independence go home and kill somebody at will, rape somebody at will, hurt somebody at will, extracted the life of other people every day at will. We got to call that what it is. They have their other accomplishments, but we got to talk about who they are when they got home and how that has become the template for men. And when you accept it, you can make clear moves. Some black women are like, I'm not going to hold this up for anybody. I'm out. Stephanie Perry, Excellence Network. Okay, hold on. Somebody's out here doing their job, keeping the part of the people. Hold on. That thing looks like it would be fun, but also completely terrifying to ride. Anyway. All right, there we go. When you come to acceptance, you can make clear moves. Stephanie Perry and Exodus Network and their counterparts in the United Kingdom, the Exodus Collective, have decided we're not going to hold it up anymore. We're out. Women like Alicia Release the Artist and myself are more on the page of, okay, we are choosing right now to stay and make this work. Confidence with Love would like us to organize as black women together to make some things happen. Because we do have memory of how black women around the world have come together and made the things that need to happen. But when you come to acceptance, the idea is you now know what your choices are. And then Alicia Release the Artist is married to a wonderful man called the Beneficial Black Man, who also has a channel. Who's off to the description. And what that tells us is, it is also possible to be in community with like-minded black men. I represent that as well, although I'm single. I'm in community with wonderful black men doing wonderful things on a wonderfully regular basis. It is possible. I'm not saying be a bigot and throw everybody of every race away. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying be a bigot and throw a whole gender away. I'm not saying that either. I'm saying when you see it, accept it. To make room to separate yourself from foolery. And when you get to the point that you are no longer spiraling up into denial, anger, and bargaining, dealing with the sadness is hard. As a black woman, knowing that the number of leaders outside the generation of men that I primarily know, when they are gone, that will be another level of grief. The depression part cannot be completely avoided. But I also am building connections with black women that will both be sustaining and also allow me to continue to grow as a leader in my own right, as someone who will have to continue to exercise leadership in a community way, and to continue growing and moving forward. Because again, I might have to go back to acceptance, because sometimes you just look at this stuff and you're like, really, is this what I got to deal with as a black woman? I didn't ask to be born to this. Sometimes that's part of the process. Sometimes sadness comes. We are human. We have a right to all of our feelings. We have a right to all the 5 stages of grief, since they're part of our human heritage. We have a right to feel what we feel, and we have a right to go all the way through to acceptance and make decisions based on what is. Not on what someone else. Because see, other people will always be dangling out a vision of what can be and snatching it away. Because if we stay in the first 3 to 4 stages of grief, then we're going to be stuck. And as I've said else before on this video, men want us to be stuck because why? Because that increases the pool of women that they can use up. But since that pool overall is shrinking, you can expect all those maladaptive behaviors to increase as their desperation goes greater. One final analogy to close this out. Why is it important in this leadership challenge to get to acceptance? Because I'll tell you why. There are plenty of men in every color who are like Stockton Rush, captain of the Titan, who wanted to be Captain Kirk. Showing entitled, disrespectful, dangerous behavior from teen years. Nobody checked him because nobody could. He comes from 2 of those founding fathers I was talking about. He was part of something called the Bohemian Club, which contains presidents. Many conservative men have been in this club. I'll put up a video about that documentary. So see a couple things, a couple patterns of men who basically are sociopaths and psychopaths in high places. But here's what happens. If you don't do the work to become a leader, if you don't do it from a servant mindset, because the ultimate leader said the greatest among you must be your servant. You think you can defy Jesus Christ like that? Here's what happens. And ladies, this is what I want you to know. No matter how much Stockton Rush wanted to be a leader, a fictional leader at that, and boy, does Captain Kirk have his problems. But he's fictional. He didn't choose anybody real that accomplished anything real. He chose a fiction that he could move around and pick and choose. He and everybody connected with him on June 19th of this year imploded. That's what you do. And that's what the risk is for you not to come to acceptance and keep sniffing up behind people that are not leaders. Harrison Lloyd, mess around and find out. That's what happened to him. That's what's happened to a lot of our sisters. And while we're spiraling, I'm saying, come through to acceptance so you can make clear-minded decisions. The triple-edged threat of leadership for the black community among men who will not lead and want to stop us from doing what we have to do, and then level that up through the society. It is what it is. Accept it. And then you can choose better. You can choose to be among people of all races who understand their assignment as stewards, not as owners of the things and the people around them. Another time we're going to talk about the members of the sisterhood who have things and are trying to discourage other members of the sisterhood from getting things so they can feel better about their life. That's not this video. Y'all have a good day. Goodbye.